and just record.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Francisco Puente, and the theorist that I chose for my presentation is Jean Piaget. And for those of you who are not familiar with who Jean is, he was the first psychologist to make a systematic study of cognitive development. His contributions include the stage theory of child cognitive development, detailed observational studies of cognition in children, and several tests to reveal different cognitive abilities. Looking at the three components of cognitive theory, it's composed of schemas, which are the building blocks of knowledge. Next, we have the adaptation processes that enable a transition from one stage to another. This is composed of equilibrium, assimilation, and accommodation. And lastly, the stages of cognitive development, which includes sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and former operational. Piaget's theory argues that we have to conquer the four stages of cognitive development. Only once we've gone through all four stages is when we're able to reach our full human intelligence. And kind of backtracking and breaking down each of the four stages, we first have sensory motor, which begins from age 0 and goes through age 2, which we develop object permanence, which a key milestone is the development of the working memory and our 5 senses. After that, we have the pre-operational stage, which is from age 2 and goes through age 7, where we develop symbolic thought. We learn to speak and understand words, images, and gestures for our symbols for something else. Next, we have the concrete operational stage, which is from age 7 to 11, where we discover the logic and develop concrete cognitive operations such as storing objects in a certain container. And lastly, we have formal operational stage, which starts at adolescence and carries out through adulthood, where we develop abstract concepts. And a critical evaluation of the cognitive theory, is that Jean's designs have been of practical use in recognition and interacting with children, especially in the world of education. Because of this theory, individuals begin to look at the world of children differently and change the way they studied kids overall. And how I tied the cognitive theory and some of the material that we learned in class this semester is looking at Standard 1, learner development. Standard 1 and the cognitive theory share some similarities, such as they both look to create environments where curriculum, materials, and instruction meet the students' physical and cognitive abilities, as well as their social and emotional needs. They both incorporate ideas such as problems that require the use of logical thinking, also known as brain teasers. And next, if you guys remember the problem posing approach that was introduced in Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Mr. Paulo, some similarities I noticed between the two is they both have a cognitive approach. Students are encouraged to participate in critical thinking situations which allow students to stimulate and exercise their brains. I also noticed that students and teachers are partners, and they seek to create a student-centered environment where the role of the teacher is to facilitate learning for students to have the opportunity to learn from one another, opposed to like the teacher just being the focal point in the class. She creates opportunities for the students to learn from one another and share their own perspectives with each other. And lastly, a problem-solving approach, opposed to just giving students the answers. Students use their intelligence and research to seek out the answer themselves. The youth developmental framework, some similarities I saw between the two is assimilation and accommodation. Associated with integrated identity, Jean viewed intellectual growth as a process of adjusting to the world. And integrated identity is the process of coming to know oneself beginning early in life and carrying out through adulthood. Another similarity was schemas and knowledge and skills. They shared connections. For example, they develop a lifetime individual drawing them in daily experiences such as social interactions. Like when you go into a restaurant and you kind of have and how you have a way of ordering food, and you kind of know that when you go into a restaurant, you do certain things, or like when you go into a library, you know to be silent you know that you're not expected to make any noise or cause a ruckus.
Mhm.
And another one I noticed was from, if you guys remember Miss Sue's instructional video, um, Gene's theory promotes a student-centered environment where students are active learners and engage in classroom discussions. If you guys remember, Sue's instructional strategies emphasize classroom engagement, such as discussions about the jelly bean graph. She questions students on how to gather information, how to use the information, and most importantly, how to interpret the information, opposed to just kind of giving students the answer. She prompted them by creating critical thinking opportunities. And my last thing I noticed was Mr. K's video. I'm sorry if I'm going on. Um, Most importantly, the cognitive theory is the acceptance of individual differences in developmental progress. They both seek to facilitate learning by using familiar examples to explain complex ideas, such as Mr. K. When, if you guys remember, he created a rap song to explain new content, such as the positive and negative integers. The cognitive theory prompts the use of concrete props and visual aids. Some examples that I noticed in Mr. K's video was the integration of warm-ups and how he used models to help students solve the problems. Another example is Mr. K using the San Diego Chargers football field as a number line basically to further explain integers. And what I think is missing or needs adjusting to the cognitive theory is that Piaget did not work with a variety of children. Research samples were all from children that came from well-educated professionals of high socioeconomic statuses. So what I would do to adjust that is I would work with children from all types of social statuses and different cultural backgrounds to further examine how accurate the four stages of the cognitive theory are and the pace by which each child progresses. Next, Jean claims that all move to the next stage of development automatically as they mature throughout life. However, I think that that's not the case. I think class environments play a really big role in this, such as if you guys remember the TED Talks video with Mr. Kwame and how he was a ninth grade dance teacher, and his students, once he observed them, he noticed that they were reading at a level beneath that of a second grader. So you could see that classroom environment does play a big part, either good or bad, and can really hurt or help a child's development. Piaget underestimated the individual differences in children and how this can result of similar ages varying in different stages. For example, one student may have qualities of formal operations, while another child might struggle to reach it. Jean assumed that physical manipulation of objects were a necessity for a child's cognitive development. And I argue this because there are kids that go through that have disabilities that are not able to physically interact with objects. However, they are still able to reach normal cognitive development as well. And my last thing that needs adjusting, I believe, is a lack of attention to culturally specific influence towards cognitive development. I would adjust this to identify those influences because cultural identity and background shape the way we perceive and understand our world and our cognitive processes from early stages of development. And that concludes my presentation.